So our next speaker is Derek Magill. He's a college dropout, a marketer, an alternative education expert, and after dropping out of college during his sophomore year, he started a marketing company and began speaking around the country about non-traditional education, and he is currently Director of Marketing at Praxis, an alternative college program. Here is Derek Magill.
Hey everybody. I'm trying not to use the mic. I don't like that noise. I'm trying not to use the mic because hopefully I can project loudly enough, and if you guys have any problems hearing me, just let me know. The talk title says Future of Higher Education, and I sort of want to add an addendum to that that I added sort of later based off of my conversations with you guys. And I will say first though that one of the reasons I attended this event is because I'm really impressed and excited about the work that Joe and everybody else at Startup Societies is doing. I'm also just in general excited to be in Europe. I find the European students are much more radical in a certain sense than many of the American students, and it's always fun to get to know every one of you. So, as Thibault said, I am the Director of Marketing at Praxis. Praxis is a 9-month alternative to college program that is hoping really to make higher education in many fields obsolete, to help people start their lives at a much earlier age, and to sort of enter the 21st century of education. So I'll begin, we're all here because we care about ideas, we care about liberty, we care about the future of humanity. Perhaps some of us are concerned about the direction that the world is going in. I want to provide you guys today with a practical outline for the future of freedom, how to get started, and some actionable advice for doing so, all sort of under this lens of higher education. A little about me. I suspect I share a similar story with a lot of you guys. When I was in college, I was heavily involved in the liberty scene, in the academic ideas scene. I attended all the conferences, I did campus activism, I did fundraising, I was involved in NGOs and nonprofits. I even sued the school for a free speech claim, and we won $15,000 and forced the school to change its policy. It was one of the best times of my life, and I got sort of increasingly roped into this nonprofit world, which I imagine many of you guys are sort of part of right now. Now, I was particularly passionate about the challenges of higher education and reforming higher education. I believed then, and I still do, that education is sort of the key to promoting liberty around the world. But as time went by, things sort of begin to change for me. I begin to feel a bit of a malaise starting to creep in. It was hard to actually measure the success I was having. And if I was having any. And the majority of my time was spent kind of talking about how bad the world was, how stupid everybody is, this very kind of negative environment that sort of starts to creep into a lot of these ideas scenes and nonprofit space. I was focusing all my time on the question of liberty so much that I was neglecting my health. I was having trouble sleeping. I was having problems dealing with other people because I was so wrapped into all these ideas, and I was sort of in that process absolving myself of the responsibility of figuring out what I actually wanted to do with my life. So it was then that I asked myself the question that I want each of you guys to ask today, and I want you to continue asking throughout the course of your life as you engage with these ideas further. And the question is, what would I do with my life if I were living absolutely freely? What would my day-to-day life look like? What would my relationship to others be? Where would I live? What would I build? In other words, what would I do if I got the freedom that I claim I want? Because after all, there's a point to liberty, isn't there? It's not simply about freedom for the sake of being free. It's about the freedom to live our lives according to our values, our needs, and our goals. I find all too often people who are kind of interested in this nonprofit space and abstract ideas forget the very concrete, practical reality of freedom. We want freedom so we can flourish as individuals and as a society. So I thought really hard about this question, and I realized that my life looked radically different than the one I was living now. I realized further that most of the things holding me back were not the government, were not other people, but it was myself and my relationship to each of those institutions. I saw that I could live free in the here and now while still projecting a long-range vision for the future of liberty and still engaging with those ideas. And so I did. I became ruthless about exiting many of the systems that were holding me back. And one of those biggest ones was college and the university system. I don't know really how it is for a lot of you guys in Europe, But in the United States, I would say, this is a charitable statement, that college is one of the biggest frauds perpetrated on young people today. We're told that we need to spend absurd amounts of money, upwards of $50,000 or $60,000 a year in the United States. Spend 4 to 8 years of our life preparing for school just to get started doing what we actually want to do with our lives. And these kids are graduating with few skills, few experiences, and little self-knowledge that allows them to go out into the real world and build a successful, meaningful life for themselves, and to go out and build the kind of liberty-related institutions that they want to build. So I dropped out. Over the last couple of years, I've built a marketing company, like T-Bolt said. I've worked with clients from all over the world. I travel pretty much full-time right now. I write, I speak at conferences. I've flown over 100,000 miles this year alone. And I've been able to do that at a fraction of the cost of college in the United States. I'm currently, like I said, the Director of Marketing at Praxis, and we've been able to help a lot of kids do similar things. So we've taken kids who are 17, 18, 19 years old, who are miserable in school and just want to sort of begin their lives, and we've helped them build tremendously successful careers for themselves at a much earlier age than they're typically allowed to do. We have 17-year-olds working at startups making $70,000 a year, $80,000 a year, and by the time they would have graduated college, they'll have 6 or 7 years of work experience under their belt. So we've started sort of an international discussion around the subject of college, and we've been able to back up our vision with real-world results. In other words, we have been able to criticize the higher education system by creating a practical alternative for myself and for others. And over the last few years, I've sort of adopted this motto more and more, and I think it's something that's very important for people who care about ideas and care about liberty. Criticize by creating. And it means a few things. It means that creators, not reformers, are the prime movers of the world. People who are able to hold an abstract idea and translate that into, and concretize it into a valuable product or service for others. It means, number two, that politics might not be the best way to make the world a freer place. In 2 years, Praxis has accomplished more for education than any reformer, I would say, alive today. We've been able to do that while making a lot of money. And talk is cheap. Ideas matter, but too often, intelligent people like yourselves get caught up in the world of ideas and never spend time to actually think about what it is they actually want and how to bring about the physical manifestation of those ideas. So I want to challenge you guys today to start thinking critically about your lives and your ideas. Ask yourself, what would your life look like if you had the freedom you say you want and you need? What would you do? Start thinking about those options more broadly than politics and reform. Can you exit an existing system and build a better alternative now? And if you can, then why aren't you doing it? Chances are, I would say you probably can, and you can probably, like I said, build a career and a life for yourself and make money doing it. So, a couple examples of this, because, again, talk is cheap. I want to show you guys kind of how this works in the real system. So people, for example, who are dissatisfied with the monetary policies of the United States and the West, well, we've been trying to reform those things for decades, and not much progress has made. Not much progress was made politically. Arguably, the single biggest jump forward in monetary policy in the last, 100 years probably or more, is the creation of Bitcoin. And that was created by a private individual pursuing his private interest and outside of traditional reform mechanisms like nonprofits and NGOs. People were dissatisfied with taxi cartels. We've lobbied for decades to try to change the system. In the United States, it can cost upwards of $1 million to get a taxi license. And nobody's been able to accomplish much politically to get this to change. Nobody's been able to accomplish much in nonprofits to get this to change. Nobody has been able to accomplish much by simply talking to get this to change. But you know who got it to change, and you know who created an alternative? Uber. Another good example. People were dissatisfied with impositions on free speech, but nothing has done more for free speech than the creation of the internet, than blogs on the internet, than magazines, social networks, products and services, newspapers. No reformer could ever match that. No nonprofit could ever match that. Another example, Dave Asprey, the founder of Bulletproof, was sick of sort of the lies the FDA and the USDA were creating about health in America and the American diet. Rather than joining them and trying to reform this system as a scientist or an academic or sort of exist as a nonprofit, he created a highly profitable business that serves hundreds of thousands of customers and helps them become healthier on a day-to-day basis. He is changing the discussion in a way that the reformers never could. One more. When Fortune 500 companies were unhappy with the treatment of gays in the United States, what do? Well, they didn't go lobby the system and try to change the laws. 15 years before gay marriage was legalized, you know what companies in the United States were doing? They were actually recognizing gay marriages at their company, recognizing couples at their company who were together and providing them with the same benefits they provided everyone else. In other words, these companies were able to implement social change in a business much, much faster than government. And it was only 15 years later that government and nonprofits and other sorts of organizations actually caught up. So, in Praxis, like I said, I despise the higher education system for what it is today. But rather than trying to reform it or change the minds of everybody, we were able to build a practical alternative that is 10 times better than the existing system, and which helps tons of kids every single day, and which is creating, like I said, an international discussion around the topic of higher education. My point is the world doesn't necessarily need more reformers. It doesn't necessarily need more intelligent young people like yourselves entering nonprofits and spending your life trying to make incremental changes. What it needs is more creators. It needs more business people. It needs more people solving problems by creating valuable products and services for other people. And I'll say it, like I said earlier, Praxis has accomplished more for education reform than any education lobbyist, any education reformer today. Sometimes reform requires total exit. It does not require operating within the existing system. It doesn't require going to become a politician or a lobbyist. It requires completely leaving that system entirely and building a better alternative. And I would hope that you guys can start thinking more creatively about the opportunities that exist for you, because we live in the best time in human history to build something really special, and it's not going to happen in nonprofit spaces. It's going to happen in the private sector, and it's going to happen from people building really cool things with technology and with the internet and with all sorts of resources that we have for us available today. Think Lieberland more than joining the Senate or becoming a prime minister or running a nonprofit. We, as young people today, have been fed a lie that 4 to 8 years in school is the best way to become happy. It's the best way to become educated, and is the best way to change the world. And you've been fed a lie that the best ways to change the world is through politics and nonprofits. And I hope you guys will join me in creating this future. I hope you guys will think more creatively about the opportunities available to you. And I want to thank you guys for listening.